He walked in holding a box as if it held a secret that might explode at any moment. It was wrapped in so much duct tape that it was hard to tell what was inside. He sat down slowly, looked straight ahead and whispered, "Please, don't turn on the radio. No one can hear this." That gave me chills. It wasn't the way he spoke, it was the way he looked at the cashier. Like he was afraid of what she might say. And when she started making that sound, a whisper that only I seemed to hear, I knew it was too late to cancel this race. If you like real or almost real stories, the kind that leave you wondering what just happened, like and subscribe to the Backseat Secrets channel. Stay until the end, because this race ended in a way that still gives me chills. My name is Chris, and I've been driving for rideshares here in San Diego for about 4 years. I've always preferred working at night. Less traffic, less heat, less noise. The city changes after 11. It becomes more honest, more raw. And that night, specifically, I was enjoying the silence. I'd done 3 quiet runs, moved the seat back a little further, turned the air conditioning to low, and sat there, in the parking lot of a 24-hour gas station, waiting for the next call. There was nothing strange in the air. Just another ordinary Thursday, with empty streets and flashing yellow lights all over the city. I often say there are 2 types of late-night commuters. Those who just want to get home quickly, and those who will use the ride as therapy. I know how to listen, I don't usually judge. And honestly, after all these years, I've heard it all. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I experienced in that race. The notification appeared as usual. The phone vibrated twice. Short ride, 7 miles to a remote neighborhood. Passenger name, just the letter D. No photo. No rating. No additional information. At the time, I thought, new to the platform, maybe a tourist. I accepted without much thought. After all, short runs are good for reaching the goal without straying too far. But the collection point was at the end of a dead-end street, behind a disused supermarket. It wasn't exactly a dangerous spot, but it also wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to find someone at 2 in the morning. Still I went. I got there in less than 5 minutes. Low headlights, dimly lit street. The streetlights flickered as if the city were half asleep. I parked and looked around. No movement. I waited a few seconds until I thought maybe it was a prank. I was about to cancel the ride when, out of nowhere, he appeared. He came out of the side of the building, carrying a box. Not an ordinary box. It was small, but it looked heavy. It was wrapped tightly in black electrical tape, with no labels, no handles, nothing. And the way he held it, it wasn't casual. It was like he was protecting it with his life. He opened the back door, walked in slowly, and sat down with the box on his lap. He didn't say, "Good night." He didn't ask my name. He said, "Please, don't turn on the radio. No one can hear this." I nodded and we continued on our way. From the moment he got into the car, silence fell. But it wasn't the comfortable silence of someone just trying to get to their destination. It was a thick silence. A kind of tension that seemed to fill every inch of space between us. The destination was in a remote neighborhood, and the app suggested the quickest route, via the main avenue. But as soon as I turned to follow the route, it murmured, "Not that way. Avoid crowded places. Go to the back." It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. And the way he said it, without looking at me, with his eyes fixed on the box, made me uncomfortable. I changed my route. I went through less well-lit streets, through emptier residential areas. And for much of the way, he remained motionless. Only his eyes moved as if scanning the car. Sometimes he'd look out the back window and then check to see if the box was still securely in his lap. It was as if he was afraid of being followed. Or watched. At every stoplight we stopped at, he shrank a little more, as if he didn't want to be seen. He even asked me not to look directly in the rearview mirror. At that point, my curiosity was already starting to turn into distrust. And that's when he did something that made my stomach turn. He slowly turned to me and asked in a low, dry voice, "Did you hear anything coming from here?" He tapped the box lightly. At first, I thought it was just me. You know when your car is so quiet that every noise seems suspicious? But it wasn't. It was real. A low, almost imperceptible sound coming from the box. It was like a buzzing, Or a whisper, I don't know. Something continuous, low-pitched, that made no sense in the situation. I tried to ignore it, but the sound seemed to intensify as if testing my limits. That's when he broke the silence, turning his face towards me without moving the rest of his body. Did you hear it too? I hesitated before answering. I wasn't sure whether to tell the truth or pretend I didn't understand. I ended up saying, I think so, a little hesitantly. He took a deep breath. He gripped the box tighter. And then he said something that makes my skin crawl just remembering it. You weren't supposed to hear it. The tone wasn't aggressive. It was one of surprise. And maybe fear. The box, previously inert, seemed to vibrate slightly in his lap. Nothing visible, but he could feel its presence in the air, as if some frequency were acting inside the car. I tried to lighten the mood by asking what was in there. He just replied, his eyes fixed on nothing. It's better you don't know. The rest of the journey was in heavy silence, and the sound continued, but constant, and seemed to grow closer. The car drove in silence, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was dense, heavy, as if there was something else there with us besides him and me. That's when I heard it. Sound, low, drawn out, almost imperceptible. As if someone were trying to speak, but from inside a tunnel. It came from the box. I looked in the rearview mirror and asked, almost without meaning to, did you hear that? He froze. He didn't even blink. His eyes fixed on the box as if it had just moved. And then, turning his head slightly, he replied in a strangely calm voice. Did you hear it too? That question stopped me in my tracks. Because whatever was there, it wasn't an ordinary sound. It was like it was speaking directly to the back of my head. I think so, I replied, feeling a shiver run up my spine. It was then that he said, with a firmness I had not heard before, you weren't supposed to hear it. After he said that, which I wasn't supposed to hear, everything changed. His posture, his gaze, even the air inside the car felt different. He gripped the box so tightly his knuckles turned white. He started sweating, even with the air conditioning on. Sweat ran down his forehead, dripping onto the box lid. Then he started talking to himself. At first, he just mumbled. Loose words. Disjointed sentences. As if he were trying to convince himself of something, or remembering something he didn't want to remember. Last time it didn't work. They can't hear. This time it will work. I couldn't tell if he was scared or if it was fear speaking for him. The tension became unbearable. My heart had been racing for a while, but then it turned into panic. With every sentence he said, I wanted to pull over, open the door, and run away. But I couldn't. I was in the middle of nowhere. And worse, with someone who didn't seem to be completely there. That's when I took a deep breath and said I was going to end the race. My voice was firm, but my hand was shaking on the steering wheel. I told him I couldn't continue, that this was too strange. He turned to me with a look so desperate, so human, that I fell silent. He said, just 5 more minutes. We're almost there. His voice broke at the end of the sentence, as if he were holding something back. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was something else, guilt maybe? Or fear of failing again. That mixture of desperation and fragility paralyzed me. For a moment, he wasn't a stranger anymore. He was just someone trying to solve something impossible. I swallowed hard, gripped the steering wheel tightly, and kept driving. But time seemed to have stopped. And the box still made that sound. Louder, clear, as if it were waiting to... After what seemed like an eternity of driving through empty streets, the GPS indicated we were approaching our destination. But what appeared before me wasn't an address. It was a plot of land. A vast space, devoid of houses nearby, surrounded by twisted trees and darkness on all sides. There were no streetlights, no city sounds, not a single living soul. I stopped the car next to a broken fence, trying to see beyond the headlights. There was nothing. No sign of construction, no vehicles, no people. Just a heavy void, which seemed to absorb the sound of the still-running engine. He glanced out the window as if recognizing the place. He clutched the box to his chest and, without saying a word, opened the door and walked out. I thought he would wait, explain, give some instruction. But no. As soon as he stepped onto the dirt floor, He started running. The box still in his arms, he disappeared into the trees as if he were being followed. Or guided. The speed with which he disappeared took me by surprise. It was as if I knew exactly where to go. I called out to him. Once, twice. Nothing. I instinctively got out of the car and took a few steps in the direction he'd gone, but a strange feeling came over me. As if I wasn't supposed to be there. As if the place rejected my presence. The air was different. Heavier, denser. And that sound, that muffled buzzing, still echoed inside my head. Even with him and the box already out of the car. I waited a few minutes, standing by the open door. Perhaps hoping he'd return, that he'd say something, anything. But all I got was silence. I climbed back in, closed the door slowly, and turned the car around. As I drove away, I avoided looking in the rearview mirror. I can't explain why. I just felt like I shouldn't. On the empty road back to town, the sound stopped. As if it had stayed there with him. Or maybe he had finally accomplished what he came to do. That night, I returned home with trembling hands and a mind in absolute silence. But it wasn't just any silence. It was the kind that comes when you witness something that defies logic. Something that doesn't fit with reality as it is. To this day, I don't know what was in that box. But I know how I felt around it. The sound, the weight in the air, the man's gaze, it all felt like part of something bigger, something I should never have witnessed. Sometimes I catch myself wondering, was he trying to get rid of something? Or protect the world from it? The only thing I'm sure of is that I'll never accept rides from that part of town again. And honestly, I never want to hear that sound again. If this story gave you goosebumps like it did me that night, leave a like, subscribe to the Backseat Secrets channel, and activate the bell to receive more stories like this. You never know what's going to fit in the back seat. Now tell me. And if it were you in my place, would you have continued until the end or stopped that race at the first whisper? Write it in the comments. I'll read it all.